back that we are now live. I'm not sure how you'd like to handle this.
This is obviously being recorded from the outset because it's showing that it's being recorded.
Yes, I think they've picked it up now that it's been recorded. I'm not sure it was right at the beginning. I think the link didn't work. It would be nice if I have that confirmed and we can just replay the whole thing and upload it as a later one. We're still not live on YouTube.
Okay, can we adjourn then, please? Can we adjourn for 15 minutes? Well, until 2:30, and just see whether we're live or if
the
link didn't work.
Is that okay?
Of course.
It would be nice.
We'll do that
if
then.
I have that confirmed and we can just replay
really useful. So it's confirmed we're live on YouTube at the moment. Is that correct? Is that correct, Miss Feeney? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just checking the stream just to make sure that we are, and we've got a 20-second delay and we're live again. I've had it confirmed. Thank you.
Excellent, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for that. That was very quickly resolved. Just in case anybody is now watching and wondering what happened at the beginning, unfortunately there was a bit of a technical glitch, which is why you've not been able to watch us live from the beginning. But don't worry, the council has recorded it. So we're not going to go over what we've just discussed. Anybody who is observing now will be able to watch the beginning of that recording, because the entire live recording will be put on later, so that everybody can see that first point. So, or the first few points, the first few. I think we were notified about 12 minutes in. So. But all we're doing is going through the list of actions. So if anybody's watching, that's what we're doing at the moment. Miss Feeney, you've got your hand up still. Is there anything further you wanted to add?
Apologies, legacy hand.
That's fine. We've all done it. No worries. Thank you. So we were just looking and going through the actions that came out of the December sessions that we held. And I am just going to go through just each matter and just see. So it's really a bit of a shout out. So if there are any points either the council wants clarity on, or my colleague just wants to ensure that he understands when we're going to get certain information in that, then we will just shout out, as I said, so that we can just understand whether we've got everything. So we got through to matter 2, issue 3, and we were just discussing the settlement hierarchy note that you've produced. So we have that. We've asked the council to produce some additional evidence on the back of that, and that will be with us by the 19th of March. So thank you for that clarity. And then we will make a decision as to whether we either allow further other participants the opportunity to have a look at that, or whether we hold a further session on that. So we'll let you know once we have the relevant data and information and notes. The other aspects of matter 2, issue 3, we've got those notes. You've provided us with F58 and F60. Matter 4, issue 5, that was clarification on neighbourhood plans and neighbourhood plan preparation. You've provided that as well. Matter 4, issue 6. Can council just clarify that you've provided that? Sorry, this seems like ages ago, doesn't it? When it was December. This is on the supported. This is about policy HPO5.
Yeah,
I've got a recollection that we have seen it, but I'm just.
Yeah, apologies.
Sorry.
I'm just trying to find that. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
apologies.
I was just about to look myself.
I do have a memory of that because it was a long time ago. Yeah, I think it was F61, clarification on policy HPO5, affordable housing.
That's it. Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Matter 5, issue 7, you've provided that, so thank you. I haven't got any issues on there. And the issues under matter 6, those actions have been done. So unless there's anything else from that original, from the December actions, the December hearing sessions, I haven't got anything further on that. So shall we move on to the actions from 2021, as we're calling it? So where we started on matter 7, so this was the site allocation actions that came out of those hearing sessions. So matter 7B, and this is more about clarity on when we may get these information. So actions 1 to 3. So this is the duplication of wording, etc., and the relevance and purpose of Appendix 2, etc. Is the council? I can't remember receiving anything yet. But is that still in work in progress on those points?
Yes, in terms, I think obviously the consideration there is broadly similar points, obviously dealing with affordable housing and the travel plan point. But yes,
it's the repetition element of points.
Site policies. I think we can.
Is that going to be clarified through the schedule that you'll send through more?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, that would probably be the most appropriate method, unless you needed a separate note. But I think it probably would be relatively short in terms of it's obviously concluding the same point for all of those. But I think we can probably include that in the schedule.
It may be useful to just understand, whether it's in a note or whatever way, to just see what repetitious policy wording you've noted, and you don't have to put every single this has been moved to this and this has been moved to that, but if you can just say, yes, we've now looked at repetitious wording on travel plans and on affordable housing and on this, and we've decided that actually we don't want it all in all these separate policies, we've amalgamated it. If you could just do a very small note, that could just be a couple of paragraphs almost.
Okay.
It would just give us that explanation then when we look at the actual schedule itself.
Yes. Okay. Understood. Yeah.
Do you know when you can get that to us? I've put down, or we've considered the date of the end of March, but we don't want you to be to have too much to do by the end of March. So is that realistic?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Yeah, we can do that.
Right. Thank you. Right, there was no actions came out of 7E unless we've missed something. Nope, 7G. The first action, you've done that. That's in F79. That's to do with the housing density. So thank you for that. Obviously, and again, linked to the settlement hierarchy, etc. And I probably should say this may be a slight repetition, but at the beginning, any observers who are watching live now, I did say at the beginning that there's an awful lot of new notes that have been produced by the council at our request, and also by some other participants where we wanted additional information. The purpose of these notes is to assist us in considering the soundness of the plan. Whether we allow participants to, or whether we require any further evidence, we will look at those notes and we will set that out later on, but not yet, because we need to make sure that we go through and consider those notes. It could be that we do require, or we do want participants to have a say on those notes. It could be if they're factual notes, they're just factual, so we don't want any more information. And it could be on the back of some of those notes we have further sessions, but we won't be making a decision for a while. So please, anybody who is chomping at the bit to respond to a note or anything like that, please don't do so at the moment, because we won't be accepting anything, because we haven't made a decision as to what we need to assist us. So I know that was slightly repeating. That was part of the original when we started at 2 o'clock, but I just wanted to clarify that. The point, Savills were going to provide some hydrology data and summary data. Has that been received? This is in relation to the Blackmore sites. That's up to Savills to provide. That's not up to yourself, but Ms. Feeney.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes, we have received that. I think we're having problems sending you the link to it because it's quite a big lot of data set.
It's a meaty document, so we did say that, yes.
I'm still trying to break it down.
Right, that's fine. As long as we know it's being dealt with, that's fine. Thank you. And then council, you were tasked to reconsider the policies R25 and R26 in terms of that local connection and the over 50s provision, etc., that's set out in that policy. So any idea when you'll get that to us?
I think by the end of March, in the same fashion as the previous ones. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Moving on to matter 7C. That's fine. If you can give us again the policy RO6, you can give that to us within the schedule. That's fine.
Yeah, just to say on that one, that we've got an examination note which is near enough ready on the heritage points, which I think I mentioned at the town centre sites session we had a few weeks ago. So that'll be contained within that overall.
Oh, that'll be within there, will it? Okay.
Yeah, so there's obviously that effect that covers a number of different sites, that same issue, so that we can cover that. But they'll be in the same date, so that's not a problem.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And we've just had the session on E11, so obviously there were some. Well, they're now at the back end of this note, but obviously there were some actions that came out of that. Today.
Yeah, they'll be in the same document too. Okay. I hope to be able to discuss it with Mr. Taylor shortly.
Okay, and timescales for that?
The same. I'm talking about the end of March. Yeah.
Right. Brilliant. Thank you. If we come to E12, so policy E12, and on the same point is E10. Are you content to provide that again by the end of March?
Yes, that should be fine. Yeah.
Matter 7D, that's fine. There was the wording clarity on RO3. Will be and the compatibility with residential uses. There was an issue coming in there, wasn't there?
Yes. So when we had the discussion on that,
you can do that. That would be great. Thank you. Mr. Warden, do you want to bring in? Did you want to come in now? I was going to raise the issue about the ribbon development and the houses that are within RO3. Did you want to come in on that now?
Yeah, we wondered whether, in looking at Shenfield, whether you could, without prejudice, but just to give us something to look at, whether you could provide us with a plan that would not include those houses along the road within the site allocation. Just so that if we found that the allocation was sound and we felt that it wasn't appropriate to include those houses within the site, we can exclude those houses. So it would be just helpful for us, so without prejudice, just to see what that looked like. And we looked at it on the ground, looked at it on a plan ourselves, but it'd be useful just to see what the boundary of the site would look like if those houses along that ribbon development were excluded from the site allocation.
Would that same point also apply to the Shenfield High School land? Because currently that's within the site boundary as well. I'm happy to do the same, but if that was, so would you want it just to apply to what is effectively being proposed?
I suppose our concerns were really about the housing.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just
wanted to check about housing.
Okay.
With the implications for the housing being within an allocated site and what that might mean for back gardens and uncertainty about future development.
Okay. Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Knight.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that would just assist us to just see that. I know that would leave an issue around Greenbelt, because obviously then the ribbon development would be in the Greenbelt, but then at least we can just have a look at it and see what potentially, subject to this allocation going forward, what that would look like. So that would just be useful. So thank you for that. If we move on, you provided the note on R19 in relation to the first 2 points on you've clarified about the care home provision, and you've clarified about capacity of the the locality. And then you were tasked to just look at the criteria under F9A and just some of the wording there. So again, if you can clarify that as part of this draft sort of schedule that you'll be producing by the end of the month, that would be great. Thank you. Matter 7F. Again, can you provide, this is on EO8, the wording, you've done this for us, so thank you for that. You've produced that. I can't remember the number of it, but I know you've sent it because I've read it. It's EO8, it's F85.
Yep.
Thank you for that. That's fine, thank you. That's complete. We had some general actions that came out of those sessions as well, relating to demonstrating exceptional circumstances. You've produced a note F80 on that, so thank you for that. We will obviously look at that in greater detail over the coming weeks. And we've moved on from the in terms of the housing trajectory. So again, we've got F81, etc. And we will come back to that because we'll come back and there are some actions that have obviously came out of Tuesday's Matter 8. So we will come back to that. Matter 12B, this is looking at policy PC 14. So again, there were just some wording elements there. PC 15 as well, PC 16. So again, timescales for us receiving those. Is it still the end of March?
Yeah, I think that should be fine. Yeah.
Okay. If at any point these timescales, as we following on from today, if at any time these timescales aren't, if you can let through Ms. Feeney know that actually, oh no, we need longer on this or something. If you can just let us know, then at least we know what we're waiting for and what we're not. That'd be really useful. Thank you. The note on SPO4 you've produced, again, can't quite remember which one it is. F84. So thank you for that. The note about BE18, BE19, BE22 and 23. These were all, well, the BE22, 23, that was deferred. That was an element that was deferred, wasn't it? Because we wanted clarification on this minimum 15%. Now the council's produced a note. You have responded on that, so thank you for that. It is note, which note is it?
F90.
F90, there we go. Yep. Obviously, we've not had a discussion on that yet. But I suppose our only comment is that in that note, if I recall correctly, you state there is no evidence. It's something carried over from your previous plan, but there is no evidence to back it up, and therefore you've stated it could just be in the supporting text as guidance. And I suppose our question back on that would be, if there's no justification, why would it be in the supporting text as guidance? That would be our query, I think, on that. So what we will do is we will have a look at the wording of that policy ourselves to understand what that note actually means. Unless there's anything, Mr. Warden, this was your session. Is there anything you want to add now about that? Obviously, we haven't got all the participants around the table to discuss it, so.
No, there's nothing. No, you've explained it. You've explained it. Okay. Fine. I've got nothing to add to where you've explained it. And as long as the council understand what we mean, we will have a look at it and decide
we
what
do.
we think is the right way forward.
We do.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then you were going to provide some information in terms of policy wording around private public allotments on BE20 and then on BE21. So to provide that by the end of March, is that okay? Okay. Matter 9, which is the Gypsies and Travellers session. This was amending the policies. So again, by the end of March, or is that going to take longer?
I think provisionally that should be fine. I think we can advise if that is going to take a bit longer, but I think it's the policy drafting is the majority of that, so it should be,
okay.
Should be fine.
Okay, thank you. Move on to matter 10, which is the employment policies. In relation to the demonstrating exceptional circumstances for removal of sites from the Greenbelt, you've done that as part of F80, so thank you for that. We'll have a look at that and consider that. PCO2, PCO3, and the other changes to the other policies you were going to have a look at, so up to PCO6. And it was considering deletion of quite a number of those policies. So again, is that by the end of March, or are we moving into April for deadlines for this one?
I think the way
this
this is
give you enough time, so
yeah, no, I think the way this
rushing.
we would like to provide you with a unified document with all of these changes in.
Yes.
And I think it's not. We've done a huge amount of redrafting over the past couple of months or so, that is time consuming. But what will also be time consuming is collating all of this and putting it into a form that is readily intelligible by you and all of those interested in the outcome of this process. So I think rather than putting us under a deadline that produces results that are less than satisfactory, this is now looking to be a bigger task than we thought. I think
that's what I was wondering.
When is Easter this year? What's
first 2 weeks in April?
It's the first 2 weeks.
Easter Sunday is the 4th of April.
Okay. So I think realistically, and bearing in mind we're looking at a timetable that may mean resumption sometime towards the end of June or July, to beginning of July, it would be sensible if we had until mid-April to provide all this information. Would that be too late for you?
It wouldn't be for myself. I mean, I would even say you can go to the end of April, to be fair.
Well, then that might be better.
Because I'm sure, I'm just trying to ensure that you have enough. And again, I would reiterate, go back to the submitted policies. Make sure that any changes are against those submitted policies.
Yes, absolutely.
So that then we have complete certainty that we're looking at the correct wording, and then obviously we can consider that. So yes, we don't want to put it off too far.
No.
Too long at all. But we do have other workloads anyway.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, depending on, I don't know how much people are working over your Easter breaks, etc. I'm trying to think, do you want to do it immediately coming out of Easter break, or do you want to give yourself just a little bit of time?
I think inevitably, because other matters will arise between now and then as well, and we're all engaged on other important
Shall we
work.
say the end of April?
Yes, that would be very helpful. That
Okay.
would be helpful.
Obviously, any additional note, and that's for the schedule. That's for the updated schedule to include all of the suggested changes, the suggested modifications that then we can consider all in one place. Obviously, any other additional information that's sort of separate to that can still be provided by the 30th of March. That would be very useful to have that. But I just want to make sure that you have the time to go through, considering the end of March is only 2 weeks away, isn't it?
Yes,
so,
indeed.
or almost.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I propose is that we will produce a document that supersedes F9A, because that has no provenance at all.
No.
So we'll start, as you say, from the submitted plan, start afresh from that in light of all that we've discussed during the examination. Okay,
that'd be really useful. Okay, so as we go through then the rest of the actions, the ones relating to policy wording changes, that then the deadline's just going to be the end of April, so we'll keep it at that. And again, please just say if you want clarity on any points, or whether we've missed anything or anything like that. If we move on to matter 11 then. The first few, I suppose the first point is about, that is about policy wording. The second point is about whether the retail hierarchy should be in policy or not, and if it's not, explain how the approach in the plan is effective. So that would be an additional note, because that's about explaining your approach. If you decided to put it into, because we may require some additional discussion on that, depending upon which way you go. So is there any way that you could provide that sooner than the end of April? So could that be something that's by the end of March, for instance?
Yes, I think that's reasonable, yeah.
Okay. Okay, the rest of it we've discussed on hot food takeaways, etc. Yeah, you've completed that in relation to the evidence. We've had the additional session today on hot food takeaways. PC 12 is about policy, so that's going to be April. Move on to PC 13. Again, that's about policy wording, so that can be April, end of April. Matter 13, matter 13D.
Sorry, ma'am, can we go back to the 1 second. The points you just made before, is it to be on a separate note, or whether it's to be in the schedule? That's PC 12. So that is to be on a separate note. Is that correct? Or are you happy for it to be?
No, yeah, actually, no. Yes, if PC 12, if you can do that as a separate note, because it's about clarification and you can't really provide that in a schedule. So if you can provide that by the end of March, so the separate notes, if you can provide those within the next 2 weeks and let us know if you can't, that'd be really useful. Because then, depending upon our consideration of that will affect the schedule, or could affect the schedule. So, so if you can do that by the end of March on PC 12, that'd be really useful, please.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Matter 13D. This is looking at the Greenbelt policies, and you've provided that policy amendments. That's on F88. Can I just ask that when you're looking at that, you also look at the supporting text? Because I know F88 only looks at the policies. So if you can also, again, you don't have to do that as an additional note to us, but if you can make sure that any consequential changes or any necessary changes to the supporting text are also included in the schedule, please, so we can have a proper look at that. That would be really useful. Okay. You were going to, as we go down the Greenbelt policies, you were going to provide some clarity on the 30% about the proportionality of whether an extension, what size extension would be proportionate, and whether it would be not inappropriate development, etc. You were going to give us some clarity on that. So again, if that can be provided by the end of this month. You were also going to provide clarity setting out how the plan accords with paragraph 138. Again, if it's at all possible to do it by the end of this month, that would help us. And clarity in how the plan proposes to accord with paragraph 141. Again, the council was going to have a look at that, to just look at the plan as a whole and see how that is being achieved. Again, if you can do that by the end of March, that would be really useful. Matter 13E, which was then moved into sort of moved then into 12A. Matter 13E was looking at, we did look at, or start to look at NE05 air quality, because obviously it's in that section, but we will be dealing with it as part of transport, and that is now going to be a further session that's going to be in June or July. I suppose my only query there is there any additional air quality evidence that the council can provide before that transport evidence is produced, or will it be produced at the same time, if any is being produced?
Yes, I can help on that. Yeah, so we are looking to get some additional evidence prepared to supplement, obviously, what's been identified through the transport assessment work. I think we'd need a bit longer than the end of April if we can have that in advance, so perhaps by the end of May, if that was acceptable. So that would be obviously available then for alongside the updated work that we're doing with Highways England. That may.
So are you proposing it'll be delivered at the same time as any transport additional notes or work?
That would be the intention. Yes, that's right.
So end of May, beginning of June. Yep.
If that's okay. Yeah.
Yep. No, that's fine. Great. Thank you. (13F) is to do with the schedule. So that's by the end of April.
Just was there another one just on the previous? There was policy NE07.
There was. That's yes. Sorry, NE07. That's again. It's to look at clause C. I think that was to look at the wording of it. So it maybe it's just a schedule thing. I don't think it's to produce a note. Let me just have a look at that. Which one is it? Look at clause C. Oh yes, it's the no unacceptable adverse impacts on property. It was what that meant, I think, because you can't really have an adverse impact on a property, or you can if it subsides, I suppose. But it's I suppose it's just the wording of it, wasn't it? So it is a wording matter. So you can probably just have a look at that. It's exactly what the policy is trying to achieve. It's about ensuring that people's living conditions are acceptable, isn't it? So
that's an end of April job.
Yeah. So if you can do that, that'd be good. Matter 13A. We've had a discussion about SPO3 today, and obviously we had it earlier as well. Excuse me. So that one's done. SPO5.
Sorry, not to interrupt again, but did we cover matter 13F, item 44 on the action list there, so but BE05 and 06?
Yes, that was
policy.
fine. And well, it could have been me. I might have just jumped over it.
No, don't worry.
I've written I've scribbled out and put end of April.
That's fine. That's what I was checking.
I thought I'd said something, but I might not have done. Those are just consider wording because it's about the deletion, and you're to advise really. If you feel that you need to advise on BE05 in a note, then do so. But if it's simple and it can just go into the schedule, then you can pop that into the schedule. Just to come in on 45A, there was Essex County Council went away this morning and undertook to get some information to support the justification. So if it's on SPO3, then it's council in consultation with Essex, isn't it? So it just needs to make sure that Essex are doing that work in accordance with the timescale that we're asking for it now. Yeah, we haven't got to those actions yet.
Oh, sorry.
You're jumping ahead. It's all right, don't worry. No, those are the actions from this. They're at the back end of this action list. But that was just the action for that. That came out of matter 13A. So, but no, thank you for reminding us, though, Mr. Warden. That was really useful. SPO5. This is the consideration of the justification for the policy. So it could be that this needs to be a note to clarify what you're going to do, because it was whether actually the policy is needed, and then what would be required by the applicant in that respect. So that could be an end of March deadline for that one, to just provide some clarity on SPO5. If we move on to matter 13B, you've got the natural environment policies. That's F87, I think. Yes. So thank you for that. Matter 13C is the heritage. And again, this is looking at policy wording in the main.
I think there might be some, I suppose we just mentioned it earlier, but looking at, well, we're talking about sites, but the supporting text, I think for some of those sites, there wasn't any supporting text associated with those requirements if they were considered to be necessary. So I think we'll just need to include that within the note.
If you can set that out, that would be really useful to just explain that. Yes, please. Thank you. So if it's possible by the end of March, that would be really useful. But once we've gone through all of this and you've had time to digest it all, if you find that things are going to take a little bit longer, just let us know. Okay. Matter 13G, that's it, amending the design policies, and you've done that. You've got that under F86. Again, we've not had the opportunity to look at that yet, so we will be looking at some of these notes and deciding whether we're content with the changes or not. Matter 12A, we've had in relation to the Highways England, so this is the transport section, so the Highways England statement and council timetable, etc. That's all sort of moved on now from there, so we know where we are on that. There's clarification required on sustainable transport that's needed before occupation of development. Is that something that can be provided, or it's not necessarily interlinked with what's happening with Highways England discussions that you're having in relation to the additional sort of modelling work that's going on? Are you able to provide that additional information by, well, we've put a deadline of the 23rd of April just to try and ease out some of this, because there's an awful lot to be provided, so we're trying to eke it out for you. Or is it something that we need to wait? Does it need to wait until the end of May, June, or is it something you can provide much sooner? We're looking at 50A in terms of the action list.
Yeah, I think we may need a bit more time, because it's probably just to clarify. We need to work with obviously the colleagues at County Council just to be sure.
To be fair, the matter 12A, it would be useful to have where it's easy to look at particular policy wording, and we can have that by the end of April. That would be really useful. But if there are some specifics about that do interlink with this additional work that we're waiting for, then we don't mind waiting for that.
Okay, that's helpful.
So maybe that deadline is the same as the transport information, yep. Unless you can at any time produce anything beforehand.
Okay, yep.
Okay, so we'll do that for end of May, June. (50B), you've produced note F84 on that. So again, we need to have a look at that and read that in more detail, because we haven't had the opportunity to do that as yet. BE11, and again that's linked with. So do you want to try and clarify that by the end of April? Would that be okay with the schedule? Yep. And then if you can't, if there are any gaps, then as long as you let us know, then we know we can come back to it.
Thank you. That sounds good.
Okay. Then we've requested this 20-30 minute walk-in cycling zones for the West Horndon interchange hub. We've got a deadline of the 23rd of April in there at the moment, but can it be provided sooner, or is the 23rd of April a fair? That deadline went in because it's after Easter. That's why it's gone in there, to just try and help you so that you're not producing everything in 2 weeks.
Sure. I think the 23rd is fine. We may just get it done sooner, but okay. yeah, I think that's fine.
The BE13 and BE14 is about policy wording, so that can be the end of April.
Yep.
BE15 is about clarity on the purpose of the policy. So this is more about this may require a note, but again, it's by the 23rd of April.
Okay. Yep.
Excuse me. BE16 and BE17. That's again about policy wording, really. So by the end of April.
Okay.
And then obviously further matters relating to transport we will be discussing at a later session, because obviously we had to defer matters, so we will be holding that. Any other query? I'm going to go on to matter 6 now, but any other queries on matter 12A? There's quite a few aspects there, but I think you've got until April to provide those, so hopefully that gives you the time. Just gives you the time to just get your thoughts into order and just. Okay, great. Matter 6. Again, it's about repetition of policy wording. so you can have a look at that and do that as part of the end of April schedule. And then there were some actual notes, and you may be able to just combine into a note. So it's about the, so you've got the ensure consistency of policies. Ensure wording of policies are consistent with meeting the objectives of the specific objectives that are set out for DHGV, etc. So you were just going to have a look at the wording of that. So that's an end of April wording issue. But if there is something you need to clarify, you can clarify it in a note, as in we need to explain why we've done this, then please explain it to us. Excuse me. And then we did ask for the cost for the school transport needs. That was going to be checked in the IDP because the figure was highlighted as being 22 million, and it was stated, I think, by Ms. Huang in the meeting that didn't look right. So you were going to come back to us on that one. So if you can, again, by the 23rd of April, but if you can do that sooner, that'd be great as well. But we'll give you a month to sort that out, or just over a month to sort that out. You were going to look at policy options to apply policy triggers for house occupations and infrastructure provision. You can produce a note on that. So is that going to be possible by the 23rd of April, specifically for DHGV?
Well, what I've done actually is I've actually redrafted the policy, and I've included some triggers. But we're not proposing to include any specific numerical number at this stage. It doesn't work on that basis. So I would ask you to wait until the end of April to see the way in which we've approached the policy, okay, and dealt with thresholds within that policy.
Okay, we'll leave that until the end of April. Then.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one was the CEG note, and we've got that. You were then going to check wording in the policies didn't prejudice potential future sustainable transport links to Basildon. This was about the eastern boundary
yes.
issues that arose.
Yep.
So again, that can be an end of April.
That's in the draft, yes.
Okay. The other aspects to DHGV were, sorry, Dunton Hills, were in relation to policy wording. So it's about clarification being given on certain points, why there are certain wording points. So, for instance, yeah. The
Yes, indeed, Mark, what we've done is address those points which were raised during the examination. We've also stripped out a lot of repetition and slimlined the policy considerably to make it effective, and you will be able to see that at the end of April.
Okay. And that applies to the three policies? Yes,
essentially the three elements of the policy have been reduced to 2 elements and substantially reduced in size.
Okay. Okay. And action 67, which is this is about supporting text regarding mitigation of the loss of the golf course. You're going to add that to the policy wording. So again, we'll look at that when it comes to the end of April. Yes. Okay. Matter 14. Is looking at SPO 6. We requested a note to consider the purpose and effectiveness of the policy, and then the monitoring framework, and you were going to amend that, and a timescale for completing that we were going to confirm post matter 8, because obviously it depended upon some of the discussions that happened, particularly as part of matter 8. So timescales for producing those. Well, the SPO6, is that something that can be simply done, or we've got the 23rd of April down because it was a later action. Is that?
Let's see how we go. We'll see if we can deal with it before by the end of April.
Okay, let's see. Let's put it as end of April then. And the monitoring framework, how long do you need on that?
Andrea will help you there.
Yeah, so I would think, given that we're going to be providing an updated F9A document, if I could have an extra week after that's been submitted, just to make sure that I can fine tune any other changes that maybe hadn't been picked up previously, that would be helpful. I've also produced a high level note in terms of what policies we're proposing to monitor, and some examples of what that might look like. So that is ready, but that wasn't on the original action list. So
no, we'll add that in then. If you want to, when you think you're ready for sending that in, we will add it in as an action. Because I remember asking for that, because I wanted the council to look at which policies do you absolutely want to. It's so important. We have to monitor these, because you can't necessarily monitor everything. Is that the note that you're referring to?
Yes. So that's pretty much ready. So we could submit that by tomorrow. If that would
be great. Yeah. And I'll add that to the list so that we know that it's there.
Okay. Yeah.
It would just need updating in due course once we know what the policy numbering is going to be.
We know that. Yeah. That's absolutely fine. Yeah. No, that would at least give us an indication of, are you providing what we think we're asking for?
Right.
It's always that element, isn't it? So then it gives us time to come back to you if it's not quite what we asked for instance. So.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's useful. And then we come on to the adjourned session that we had for matter 7. And some of these are around, some of the actions that are listed are around policy wording. And I think, Mr. Quilter, it's about the element that you've related about the heritage matters, etc.
Yes, that may well be picked up a bit earlier than what's suggested in those dates, but we can, it will be covered by that note.
Yeah, it could be that you do need longer to just look at the wording, make sure it is. You may wish to clarify with Historic England that the wording is okay, and that may take a little bit longer. You may be perfect.
We have run it past them, so they have got some. We've got that covered in respect. But thank you. We'll certainly consider that further if needed.
Okay. And then the other actions that have been added are on a different list. So bear with me. It's on this list. We now come to the other matters. So unless there's anything else under matter 7C that needs to be highlighted.
I think it was just, there was a few there that were separate to the heritage point, but in relation to William Hunt's Way, it may well touch more upon the trajectory, I guess, but it talks about clarify lead-in time for providing.
We'll be moving on to that in a minute.
Okay,
when we come to, because obviously we discussed that this week under matter,
that's fine.
Matter 8. So we will come back to those points in a minute because you wanted clarity on sites, etc. So we'll just finish off this list and then we'll know where we are. So the other matters that are listed on the action 2 list, you've provided the updated trajectory, and you've done that. So that's at F81. So that's been completed. And then we've discussed about, it was just a reminder. The next one was just a reminder about the element about the settlement hierarchy, etc., which I know you're working on, and you'll do that by the 19th of March. So that's great. Then we move on to the actions that have come out of this week. So you've got matter 8. So there were some queries that came out of HPO 4. Well, all of the policies actually that we discussed at the start of matter 8. HPO 1, I can't, Council, you may want to assist me here, but I can't recall any actions coming out of that on HPO 1. I think it's very much we will go away and consider that policy and then direct you if necessary, unless you can tell me that actually no, there were specific, because I can't see in my notes that we actually asked for anything in particular on that.
No,
so
I don't think there is anything.
We will go away and consider what we heard on HPO 1 on Tuesday and come back to you on that. HPO 6 is to do with wording.
So I think, sorry, the only thing I recall about HPO 1 was a reference to the SHMA.
Yes.
To consider whether it's appropriate to have it in the policy.
Yeah, I think it's that wording. But anything else, we'll come back to you on that if we feel that it's necessary. And then the rest of it is until we come down to, so HPO 2 and HPO 3 is about amending wording, or HPO 2 is about deleting it, moving any outstanding matters into an appropriate policy, etc. So again, are these timelines, are these still going to be the end of April? Because these are going to fit into your amended schedule. Yes. Okay. If we move down to, we then ask for a note on your 5-year position taking into account shortfall, which I know you'll be working on. Again, what's the deadline for producing that? When can you produce that by? I'm trying to recall, did we set that in the meeting, in the session?
I think provisionally we did say the end of next week, but yeah, I'm wondering whether on reflection it may just be, we need another, perhaps if we say into the end of March, if that was acceptable, just to sort of, unless you need it sooner, happy to obviously to do that, but just thinking of timeframes. Mr. Warden, what's your take on that? Do you want that sooner rather than the other evidence?
We would like it sooner, but we recognise that we were putting a lot on you. So you did volunteer next week, but if you wish to reflect on that, then and come up with a later date, then that's fine. You know, you've got a lot to do.
Yeah, I think if that's something you could quickly prioritise.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah,
I think that would be quite useful, and then maybe put some other stuff to the back burner. That would be really useful. It's just so that we have an indication, because in our heads as to what that would mean.
Yes.
So that's really useful. The next one was about the note or a statement of common ground you referred to about the development partnership and the details behind car park site delivery, etc., and how that's going to come forward, because we don't have any evidence on that in front of us. So you were going to provide that. Again, what's the deadline for that?
I think
is that something
we could that we can do that fairly quickly, but again, probably towards the end of March, being realistic. But we're looking at compiling that with the Brentwood Development Partnership. Looking to compile that in the next week or so. So if we could say the end of March, and then we will get it to you sooner if that's available at that time.
Yeah, again, that is definitely that would be a useful priority. Yes, so thank you for that. And then we did ask you for a note confirming resources to process a number of planning applications. We asked for a note on step trajectory and a note setting out sites out under 1 hectare although we recognise that obviously the plan doesn't allocate sites under 1 hectare. We recognise that, but if you can just provide a note as to how you're sort of fitting with that. And then in that session, we were asked to provide some information about the sites that we have concerns about in relation to the trajectory. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Warden here, who's going to just discuss that with you. Now, again, this is without prejudice at the moment.
This is where the information that we're asking you to do relies upon some guidance from us, and Mr. Shardavian made that point very clear, and we understand that. So we need to give you some indication of where we are on thinking of some of the sites in relation to particularly 5 and 10 year supply. And all we talked about yesterday, if you start with a 5-year supply, and if something doesn't appear in the 5-year supply and gets pushed back, it might have an impact on the 10-year supply. So what it's basically, we've got some thoughts. They need to feed into your thoughts, so you can feed them back, so we can consider what you're saying. And the William Hunter Way is a case in point, where at the moment we're not convinced there is any evidence to suggest it should be in a 5-year supply. So you need to provide to us that evidence. So at the moment we would say that's not a 5-year supply site without prejudice, because we're not totally convinced that we've got that evidence that it would deliver 300 homes by year 5. So it's incumbent upon you then to provide the evidence to us to help us with working out, and that also feeds into your 5-year supply calculations as well. So there are other sites as well that relate to that. We've got some concerns about start date for Dunton Hills without prejudice that has an impact on 5-year supply, and we've got some concerns about, as we said, at the 5-year supply about West Horndon, about that in relation to the 5-year supply. So those then feed into down the line. West Horndon feeds into 10 years. Dunton Hills feeds into 10 years. We at the moment have got a few concerns about start date, not necessarily start date for Shenfield, but some of the rapid rise in delivery early on, which may impact on 5 years, but we don't think it would impact upon 10 years. We think that still, from what we're seeing at the moment, it looks like that could be dealt with in 10 years. So we need to provide you with some information, don't we, in order for you then to put that into your calculations. Again, all without prejudice, because we haven't come to any conclusions yet on any particular site.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. So do I understand it that you will be providing us then with that those identified issues which we will need to address, and provide us with a timescale for addressing them?
Yeah, so they will then feed into your timescales, but your work.
Yes.
You may take a different view, and some of this may alter, because, for example, William Hunter Way site, we will further down the line, if we're convinced, then that will also impact the figures. But we will give you some indication of those sites that without prejudice, and I've just outlined most.
Yes, you have. You have indeed. Yes.
Related to 5-year, which we did go through, so they're not surprised.
No, they're not surprises to us at all. We would like, and it may be you might want to, without creating extra work, you may want to look at certain different options. If that goes in, then the 5-year supply is this, etc. But we will provide you with some indication. When you say options, you mean looking at alternative provision or additional provision? Well, what I meant was, if those sites don't go in, or if those sites go in that level, what does that mean? What you did highlight, Mr. Shardavian, yesterday, I think Tuesday, was that there was then an impact on the 10-year supply. Yes.
So that 5 year moving along, things from the 5 year moving it along impacts upon 10 year. And so the sites that I've just mentioned, William Hunter Way doesn't affect that. Shenfield, we've suggested, doesn't affect that, but Dunton Hills would, and West Horndon would, because of the way in which it's staged.
Yes.
So if you move those along, that would increase the gap at that 10 year 10 year position in relation to those sites, those longer term sites that get moved along from start to. There'd still be with the exception of Dunton Hills, because Dunton Hills goes on and therefore would affect the end of the plan period figure, but West Horndon wouldn't, but it would affect the 10 year.
Yes, we understand that. Yeah.
So I suppose, whilst we're not giving you an indication of what we think the gap would be because there's some work to do, but based upon the information we've got in a moment, there may well be that gap that you've already identified may well be bigger.
Yes, it might. Can I just make a couple of observations? And it's not about merits or anything like that. It's just about the logical consequences in the context of a step trajectory. When we revisit these sites and look at prospective delivery, having regard to the points you've raised, and let's assume, just for argument's sake, that the figures push back delivery, and there is an effect, therefore, on both 5 year and 10 year supply. If you conclude on the facts that there is a deficit, then of course you will necessarily come back and require, well, one of three possible outcomes. The setting back of delivery on some of these sites is a basis for looking at a step trajectory. I say a basis for looking at a step trajectory. In the context of what is going to be delivered over the 10-year period, or what is capable of being delivered over the 10-year period. So all I'm saying really is once you've got this information, you will come to a particular conclusion about the housing supply issue and its effect on soundness. I'll put it broadly like that. I'm just wondering whether there is, therefore, at this stage, any merit in providing you with a note on the appropriateness of a stepped trajectory, which would be a natural consequence in any event of the way in which sites are going to be delivering over the first 5 years. And I say that because let's say the decision is that one needs to look for further sites. Depending upon the nature of those sites and where they are, one might speculate that they're not going to contribute very much in any event to the first 5 years. So there still might be a 5-year supply deficit, but that you conclude, nonetheless, if one is looking at to the first 5 years, if one is looking at it on a straight line basis. But you might conclude that the addition of that site or those sites will provide the 10-year supply or a surplus over the 10 years, in which case you will treat, as it were, the later delivery or contribution those sites make as a step trajectory. I understand. Therefore, I hope I'm explaining myself properly without being too specific about potential outcomes. I'm just wondering whether it's useful at this stage for you to have a note on step trajectory and rather await that discussion until we've given you the information or you require in relation to these sites, and await your decision in relation to those.
Yes. So you're suggesting that it might be more helpful to await us receiving your step trajectory until further work is done?
Well, no. What I'm trying to do is distinguish what is a stepped trajectory from what is a realistic assessment of delivery. Because the stepped trajectory, I suppose it's one of the same things in a sense, because you're saying, well, we've put this site back a year in terms of delivery, so therefore it doesn't fall within the 5 years, or there are less appearing in the first 5 years. What we're providing you is a realistic trajectory. Whether it's called a step trajectory or not, at this point in time doesn't matter. It's the trajectory upon which you will make an assessment as to whether or not there is a need to identify further sites or whatever other action you might determine is appropriate. It's only after considering the need for further sites, if there is a need for further sites, or you are content with what is proposed, that one might call it a step trajectory formally for the purposes of this plan in determining whether or not there is a 5-year supply. So it's an automatic issue, if you know what I mean. It comes after you've made a decision about the soundness of the plan with regard to housing delivery. Am I making myself really unclear?
I suppose what you would like from us is a direction on what sites we think should be moved back or what shouldn't. But unfortunately, we can't do that until we've, because that would assist with you producing. Or are you? I'm just trying to understand what it is you want a note telling us about the step trajectory. But you've already got a step trajectory in the plan.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'm just. Let me start again without convoluting things too much.
Unfortunately, though, I'm going to have to go very, very soon.
Okay, I'll be very quick then.
Because this had supposed to have finished at half 3.
I'm so sorry. Look, what we'll do is provide you with the further information and a revised trajectory, if we think it's appropriate to do so, against any revisions. So we'll provide you with a revised trajectory, but leave it at that, so you have that to consider.
Yeah,
it will in essence be a step trajectory.
Yeah,
because
I think
it won't be.
Yesterday, when I asked you whether if you went back to what a stepped requirement, so your requirement was stepped, it wasn't consistent,
yes,
which is in the plan.
Yeah.
But the figures that you've got in the plan might not be the appropriate figures in the way that is stepped, because the stepped requirement needs to reflect the likelihood of those sites coming forward in the way they're coming forward over the plan period.
Yeah, indeed.
And you said you'd looked at it, and in that sense, it would be helpful for us to see what your thinking was. But I appreciate that at the moment there's still some work to be done, even without prejudice on any site. There's still some work to be done. For example, you've got to provide more information to convince us that William Underway is in the 5-year supply, for example. But over the 10 years, the 57 gap, which the council has said is not material, and we can take a judgment on that. That is, it's not going to get any better because you've not got any more sites. It's only going to.
That's understood.
It's only going to improve. And if you had a stepped approach that could deal with that situation in an appropriate way that was sound, then that would be helpful for us to see. Realise that it's not known at the moment. So I think well, I'm not totally clear, but I think that what you're saying is that if you saw what that looked like over the plan period, that might help you form a stepped policy. Is that correct?
Yeah, what I'm saying is we will provide you with any adjustments to that trajectory, bearing in mind the matters which have been discussed, and we will set out what that means for 5 and 10-year delivery and end of plan period delivery. So you have those 3 figures.
Yes.
To get a full idea of what the potential implications of the supply will be from the allocated sites. That's as far as we can go, but it will identify what's being delivered over each of the years, with any adjustments made following our recent discussions in relation to delivery. So it's been very helpful in that regard. I think that's as far as we can go. Until then, you make some kind of decision in relation to delivery and whether or not there is adequate provision being made in the plan, at which point we'll have to go back, obviously, and reconsider what the options are. So, so far as our promise to provide you with something is concerned, we can certainly provide you with those figures. Did we promise it to you at the end of the month, or was it sooner than that?
Yeah, Tuesday, so next week, but we recognise that ties in with your ties in with your 5-year supply work, which I think we've looked at later in March. I think
it does indeed, because and this is the point I was trying to make badly, and just to very briefly. The note on the step trajectory and its appropriateness will really depend upon the work we're doing on the trajectory.
Yes.
So, so we can have that work done fairly soon, I would have thought, because we've been working on that too. So by the end of next week, I think we can give you a fair idea of what the trajectory looks like, taking into account the issues which have been raised. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry to prolong that discussion.
No,
our concern isn't just about the 5-year supply, because as I said, you know, I know the council is in the plan. There's a step trajectory, and we will look at the deliverability aspect. But it's now the potential, and I say potential because no decisions have been made about there now being an unmet need.
Yes, that's understood.
Which has never come into play until this week, because obviously the plan has made it very clear, and you as the council has made it very clear you are here to meet your identified needs. So it's just putting that on the horizon.
Yeah, that's absolutely understood.
Okay.
And so we'll provide you with any changes to that trajectory, so that you're in a position then to make an assessment of that, and also come to a conclusion about what that means in terms of process.
And whilst I'll say maybe over the next few weeks as well, it might be helpful for the council to consider, if we came back and said what happens in terms of that unmet need, what options there might be, and on what timescales there might be to do something about it. I mean, that's completely without prejudice, because we don't know what we're going to do yet.
No, indeed.
But it might be that having you thought about if it was route A or route B, what that would mean in terms of timescales and process, that might be helpful just to consider it without any prejudice to where we might be going. Absolutely, that's perfectly understood, and that's very helpful.
Okay.
So thank you, and I'm sorry to prolong.
No. It's a very helpful discussion. It's very useful. Thank you.
I am literally going to have to go. So the only outstanding matters that we were just going to go actions, I should say, that needs to go through were the rest of the actions from this week, which were just in relation to today, basically. And I think we know what those actions are. It's just a timescale as to when those actions can be completed. Essex County Council was provides us some figures on overweight, etc., etc. We're going to be considering the HIA, that blanket approach. That's something for us to consider. And then there was confirmation and a revised map for E11, etc., etc. So again, are we talking the end of April for those to just give yourself some time?
That would be helpful.
And obviously you can produce it sooner, can't you? But
if we can, we will. But let's give ourselves a deadline of then, and we'll produce it sooner if we can.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can I just raise one point on action 93 and the boundaries? In that following the session, Mrs. Wright and I did look at the boundary of Brentwood Enterprise Park Greenbelt, and we would like you to look at the boundary. But we noticed, for example, that the width of the blue area is quite wide compared to the access that would be required, because quite a lot of the access along the road, the B road, is sight lines, which may well be in the highway. So it might be the access point is not at the southern end of where the blue line is. So you're going to look at the boundaries. So just have a look at another plan that's been submitted in terms of the access point is not definitive. So you need to give some flexibility to make sure that the access point can go in. But we just would like you to just look at that critically so that we minimise greenbelt take.
Yes, we will. And it might be as well just to provide you with a plan that superimposes the proposed access works.
That would be really useful to see. So thank you for that offer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on that note, I know that Council, you are looking at potential hearing dates in the future. I will leave that, or we'll leave that with you to discuss, and through Ms. Feeney, you can come to some judgment on when that may be possible. Obviously, depending on when we get the information from the transport considerations, we will need quite a bit of time between that and holding the sessions, obviously, to allow ourselves to digest the information, but also other participants. And if we need any additional hearing statements or anything from people, we just need to give them an opportunity. It will be short and doesn't need to be 6 weeks or anything like that, but it can be much shorter, but not too much shorter. Probably about a month or so. So just to make you aware of that, but we'll leave you to come up with times and dates and things like that as potential, as provisional. But we do need to slot something in quite quickly, because obviously we've got other work priorities, and so have yourselves. So yes. We'll at least get something provisionally jumped in. So unless there's anything else, which I don't think there is. No,
just to say thank you to you both very much indeed for your attention to detail, and most appreciated.
Thank you. And we would like to thank the Council, obviously, for hosting this event and all of the hard work that yourself and your officers, etc. I'd like to really thank all of the participants who have come along. It's really been very, very helpful. And last but by no means least, I'd like to thank Ms. Feeney, who is always there in the background, sometimes in the foreground, trying to fight fires. Just want to say a great big thank you. So yeah.
And I think as well that it's really difficult dealing with remotely, because normally we'd all be in the same room and we'd be recognising the body language and the eye contact, and it would be a bit more of a more helpful process being together. But thank you very much for bearing with it remotely, and thank you for your contributions.
No, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll see you again in the summer.
Indeed.
Have a good spring.
Thank you.